Okay, so we are live. I hope that for those of you online watching now that the audio is in sync. My kind of microphone is going through the computer and the video is going through Blackmagic Web Presenter, which could mean that there's a slight discrepancy, but nonetheless, I hope that this information that we discussed today proves to be useful. Welcome back to the channel. I really apologize for the fact that it's been such a long time since I've been kind of on YouTube creating content. It is just the nature of the beast. Of course, I don't count myself as being a social media influencer, and I don't count myself as being a YouTuber. My day-to-day business is running for Vida, trying to earn enough money to keep the business going, earn enough money so that I can have fun doing what I'm doing whilst feeding myself and feeding my family and the individuals and families of the team members. The subject that we're going to look at today was an email that was sent in to me via email from a previous video that we posted. And it's a really interesting point, and it's something that I've experienced myself, and there's a chance that a number of you would have experienced this as well. For those of you online right now, if you are watching this live, please feel free just to drop a comment just to let me know in the chat that I am live streaming good and that the audio is good as well. That would be great. This is the point. Let me see who this is from. Sal. So Sal says to me, he says, came across the last video on YouTube about starting a production company. I'm in the process of starting one and would wonder if I can seek some advice. Of course, that's why I'm here, happy to help. As someone who is coming from a shooting background like yourself or like me, he wants to still shoot projects within the company, but obviously also needs and has to do this other role of being a director. Thank you, Andy. Audio is running good. Needs to be a company director. So when you set up your business, if you are an artist or you're going to be a filmmaker or a photographer, of course, the very thing that starts to get us involved in this process is it is the work itself, right? You do what you do and you love doing what you do. And naturally, the aim is that the projects end up getting bigger and you end up getting more and more projects and more jobs. And if you do your job well, what ends up happening is you end up evolving and you end up growing. And when you grow, all of a sudden, it becomes very, very difficult to juggle the different hats. So for me, naturally, filmmaking and photography is where the passion is. I also really enjoy the brainstorming and the process that goes into creating the end results and producing the production. And I got to a stage in my business whereby I ended up not being by myself any longer as a shooter, but all of a sudden I needed to have an editor. I needed to have maybe someone else helping out with photography. I ended up needing to have people involved in helping me bring in more business or trying to keep the clients happy, right? So that larger companies tend to deal with sometimes freelancers, but they also respect a level of infrastructure because at the end of the day, their job is dependent on whether you do a good job. If you mess up your job as a filmmaker or as a photographer or any other kind of creative service, it could be that it puts their job on the line. So they tend to look for a safe place to go, and that's either someone or a team with experience, or it tends often to be a business, right, with a team. Got to a stage where I ended up having that team, and I ended up walking into the office at 7, 8 o'clock, and then from the 9 o'clock and through to the 5, 6 o'clock, what I ended up spending my time doing was essentially dealing with team members' queries, inquiries, questions, and I ended up having to spend most of my time actually running the mechanics of the business instead of actually doing the creative work, right? Phone calls with accountants, then you've got the HR elements, then you've got internal, sometimes you've got internal relationships and politics to deal with to a certain extent, just it's the nature of having a team. working out where the next job is coming from. And every person that you get in the team at some point ends up, they're asking questions, right? Then you get to the stage where when you're on location and you're on set, well, you're surrounded by team. And what started to happen with me is I started to end up moving further and further away from the camera. But the very thing that I wanted to be involved in, actually, at the beginning, was being hands-on with the camera, with the technology, shooting, directing, doing a mixture of both. And yes, I love that. I also love the element of running a team, but there's definitely a caution there. In fact, with Avida, I actually ended up shrinking down my team a little bit as well, partly with a focus and a name now of getting more and more hands-on, because I was watching people filming, I was watching people on the cameras, and I was like, I want to be doing that stuff because that's where I started out. That's where the passion is. That's where the love is. But because the business ended up growing, all of a sudden, I ended up wearing the hat of being a boss. Thank you also to those of you now that are watching this via live stream. Also, thank you to those of you who are watching this. Appreciate any likes, any shares, kind of gets the message out, and it means I get to help answer some of these questions, such as the one that Sal's brought straight in. Also, during the course of this broadcast, if anyone has any questions, feel free to throw them straight in the chat box. And if you're watching this in replay, I often do look at those questions to come in and try my best to answer them. So that growth is something that is a double-edged sword, and I think you have to be aware of that. See, if your love and your passion is 100% solely behind filming or solely behind the photography, actually being a freelancer can often be an amazing way to go. I look at directors of photography, and I've got a number of friends in the industry, people that I've met. Evan Bossier, for example, highly respect him and his work based in Boston. And you look at the Instagram feed and you go, oh my gosh, look, shooting this client, shooting the next one, shooting the next one, right? And it's because a director of photography's job is literally to walk on from one set to another. They go on location, they film, they do the sexiest part of the job, and then they wait for the next one to come in where they only do that particular part of the process. But one of the things when you start to run a production company is that you end up having to wear multiple hats. I think that also partly depends on your target audience. We deal at Avida a lot with corporations and companies. So it tends to be that they end up wanting a more of an end-to-end solution. I tend not to be working so much on the advertising side of the businesses that I'm representing. Corporations and companies that work with advertising tend to go to agencies. Those production agencies, those kind of creative agencies, they then farm out the creation of a project. Once they've done the book storyboarding and all the brainstorming and they've got the treatment, they hand it over to a production company. That production company then will go forth and create. Sometimes it's a company that will bring in talent to help them with filming and help them with shooting. Sometimes they may have a roster on site with just a few members of team and talent. For Avida, we're kind of in between. We are a mixture of agency and production, kind of merged into one, focused on video, animation, photography, and virtual reality. But for the clients that I tend to deal with, we have to run from the creation, we have to run from going out and getting and finding the client. Then when we find them, essentially dangling that carrot of that creative concept and idea, we have to build that. Then we end up getting involved in doing it. What I've realized is I'm not the type of individual who likes to be told what to shoot. So a director of photography will walk onto set. The concept and the idea is already created in general, and you don't get involved in that. But that's the bit that I really enjoy. So for my sins, for being involved in that creative process of coming up with the ideas and the concept and having more control, pre-production, the production, and then afterwards I get involved in the post-production. So yes, the edit is generally down to myself and the team. The one problem that I have to deal with is, yes, I may have to have more people involved in the process, which is great, but also can mean that I have to spend more and more time managing the actual business itself. And not all of that is fun. I have days where I'm working on accounts. I have days where we're always working on trying to bring in that next piece of business, maybe thinking about paying off certain bills, etc., etc. The joy that I have is that I have a personal relationship with, I don't know, Barclays Bank. You know, I know the individuals in there and I'm working with them. They're my clients. Burberry, for example, we've just recently done a project for Burberry, and they are my clients to communicate with them directly. So I enjoy that, and that's one of the benefits of having and owning the production company or the agency, is you can get involved at all of the stages throughout that production process. But you have to remember that the reality of it is that you will not be able to spend all of your time creating. So, for example, let me give you an idea of Final Edit 4K launch. This is a video that we ended up creating for Burberry. There we go. Excellent. I'll turn down the audio. I'll turn this audio down now. Right, so with this process, it was great because I had to wear many hats. I got involved in the brand, helping to develop and create the brand that the name of the project was inspired off of. Went and got my hands dirty on the pre-production side. That was awesome. On the billing, then involved in the filming, and then also the editing. For me, because my business, the one upside is I actually got to get hands-on, and I was actually the person behind the camera. But that's also partly because in the last year, what I've ended up doing is I've actually shrunk my business down a bit. So before, whereas I had an in-house editor, but then what was happening is sometimes I was thinking, oh, I really want to edit that piece myself. But because I was paying the money out on the editor full time, and Jordan was very talented, and I still can get him in and use him if I want to in particular projects and continue to do so. There were projects like this that I would want to cut and edit myself. But then what I would be doing is I would be taking that job away from the editor who I was paying on a monthly basis in order to do it. Does that make sense? Let me know in the live stream if it does make sense. So I actually ended up shrinking my business down just a bit whilst I partly find my own identity. I'm trying to work out whether I am the director, whether I'm the person behind the camera, and I'm kind of pulling this all together, partly because I don't yet know quite who I am. Does that make sense? Because I enjoy all elements of the process. So at the moment, I feel like a little bit of a schizophrenic creatively and from a business point of view, because my dream was, yes, grow the production company and the business and the agency to a certain scale. What ends up happening is I end up spending my time constantly doing meetings. I'm on and off airplanes. I'm in and out of the city. And then when the business would come in, I had to literally walk away from some of the creative process. I might come up with the creative idea and the concept. I might direct there on the day, but then I have to step away slightly because I have to then manage the process. And it wasn't quite as I wanted it. So I shrunk it back down again, and I ended up getting more and more hands-on. The difficulty is then all of a sudden, projects start coming back in again. And with this, I'm partly responsible for coming up with the name. You can't quite see that. It's because of the exposure on the camera. It says Burberry Inspire, and that brand name. Then I'm responsible for the story behind it and then the actual filming. But it meant that I had a lot of work to do. And it was absolutely crazy juggling all of that. And now I shrunk things back down again. We're now back to a stage where everything's starting to grow again. Right. And I'm having to deal with people throughout different countries. And last week I was in New York for the week. Then I was touring the UK. Next week I'm in India. Then I'm probably back to the US again. And if things end up getting really, really busy again, all of a sudden I fall back into having to wear the boss hat. So then what do I do? And maybe for yourselves as well, I have to start to think about what things make me personally unique, where my particular strengths lie. And I might have to go, one day I may have to turn around and go, something, I am not the person to be behind the camera. I love filming. I think I'm quite good at it. But there are other people that have got those talents and those abilities. My core key ability, my core genius, because that's what you're looking for. You're looking to understand what your core genius is what is that? For me, maybe it's coming up with the story and the concept and the idea and bringing the client through that process. And maybe then I bring in other team members to get involved in the filming, and I have to step away again. At the moment, I'm not 100% sure. So I'm at the moment in this huge, fairly large Vivida studio, which I can walk all the way over here. Keep going. You probably won't see me. Keep going. I'm shouting to you now. I'm over the other side of the studio, and it carries on going all the way down the end. This is my story factory, right? It's my story mill where I get to brainstorm and shoot and have ideas. I have some team in here sometimes, but actually the team work elsewhere. This is my own little sanctuary, because I'm also going through this process of understanding where my clients feel my core genius is, where they feel I should be placed, and then also understanding myself. Am I the person behind the camera? Am I the director? Am I the business owner? And at the moment, I've been an element of all three, and I'm finding myself. And I know that a lot of you will end up going through this particular process as well. Christian says, what's your thoughts on not growing your team and keeping the business as a one-man band? I see so many guys try to grow teams, and then things seem to get more and more stressful and less enjoyable. Very good point. I personally really enjoy having a team, and I enjoy the team dynamic. I also believe that in order to be able to get the best, create the best, you need to work with amazing, talented people. And that's what I have now. I've got Matt, and I've got Gaia, and I've got Rihanna, and I've got a number of team members, and they are all fantastically talented in their own right. So I enjoy working in that process. I thoroughly enjoy that. But the thing that happens is as your head count starts to grow, one of the key stresses that you have in the back of your mind is actually paying for everything and paying for everybody. So my advice is to keep things balanced until you can work out what your sustainable level of income is. You also have to bear in mind that things can change overnight. So, for example, one of our major clients this last year was not a major client this year. So, and now has become a major client again. I still end up working with them, but it's just that their budget's changed. So all of a sudden we're dealing with thousands and thousands of pounds less as income than we would have been doing before. So all of a sudden, sometimes things end up having to change, or you have to very quickly put your foot down and work out how on earth do we start to make things ends meet. It doesn't mean that your business is not successful. It's just that you've grown to a certain stage. And in order to be able to sustain it at that level, you need a certain amount of income, because your aim is to keep having to pay all the people, all of the staff, and all of the, the scale. So you have to kind of work out what is actually sustainable and appreciate and understand that changes over a period of time, and it can fluctuate. I think one of the key things is if you are a one-man band, always working by yourself, you are not able to cope fully with maybe the scope and scale of the projects that you aspire to reach out for. Those things often require a team. So two options I can see. One is that you as an individual become extremely talented and creative in your particular sector, maybe a director of photography, could even be an AC, a focus puller, or maybe you work it as a lighting or a gaffer, or a photographer or a makeup artist. You focus your attention on that skill and you insert yourself into other people's teams. Or you, three options, or you employ a full team of individuals, okay? Or the third option, which is kind of where we are now, I employ right now the key talent that I need. actually with a focus mostly on getting in new business and running day-to-day operations. And then we bring in other talented people to boost the process or boost the team. At one stage, Gabriel, hi, if you're watching, we employed Gabriel, the most amazing artist and creative for motion graphics and animation. But in the end, it actually made more sense for us to work with different creative artists depending on the nature of the product, so that we weren't dictated to by a particular style. So there are different models of working, and that's essentially what we start to analyze. And I think it's really wise that if you're building a production business, that you start to understand what part of the process you particularly like and what part of the process you are particularly good at. Are you a shooter? And if you're a shooter and someone involved in filmmaking, if that's where you've started and that's what you enjoy doing, maybe a production company isn't the best way. Maybe you want to be a director of photography, because all you want to be is you want to be on set for many days throughout the year, working on really high-end productions that you could not do alone. So you need to insert yourself into other people's productions. Or perhaps you're like me and you like being part of the end-to-end process and solution, and that you like to talk to clients, have relationships, wine and dine a little bit, come up with the storyboards. And it's like working as a one-man band. However, you have a team in order to facilitate that scale. And that's the model that I'm currently following. And also understand that as a person and as an individual, things may change in your own mind. So to give you an example, thank you very much. Someone who's given us a like on YouTube, watching this on the live stream. For example, for me, I married my first love, but the majority of people may through their younger years date different types of people, right? And they may date them, go out with them, maybe then end up changing because they're not yet ready to settle down. And I think often in business, that's what we end up going through. It's okay at the beginning. I didn't play the field, but from a business creative point of view, you go, okay, I'm going to play the field a little bit because I don't quite understand exactly what makes me tick. I don't quite understand where my full potential is. So you might go, look, I'm going to do some shooting. I'm going to try some brainstorming. I'm going to try some things, talking with clients. And then in the end, what happens is you find out what you absolutely hate doing, and you work out whether it means that you choose your line of work within the production cycle to a specific refined area, or you try and employ somebody or get a team member to do that element that you do not like doing, if that makes sense. So yes, Christian, it's absolutely fine to do that. And you do not need to know with absolute 100% certainty at the beginning of your journey what it is that you want to be and what you love. The aim is you have to go through this self-discovery, and you have to go through this change. I've gone from doing weddings, and then I've moved into more corporate commercial, and then I've kind of now gone into virtual reality. And now we work with businesses working on video animation and VR, with the emphasis on storytelling as a holistic sort of side of things. But I actually moved my business over the course of the last year in quite a totally different direction. But I went very much towards human storytelling. And in fact, we've got a website that's about to be launched that's in that direction. But I've also realized that the thing that I love doing is talking to businesses, understanding their problem, and really digging and going really deep into the actual business and the mechanics, because I'm in business, I'm nosy. So I want to understand what they're going through. I want to understand how to help. And I really enjoy that consultancy element at the very beginning. So now I start to think as a business, how do I start to charge for the consultancy side, for the storytelling side, before I even pick up a camera? And then I start to go, well, actually, do I even need to pick up a camera? Do I become like a creative director? And it's a team, we're like an agency that comes up with the idea and the concept, and we hand over to some other company to do the filming. At the moment, that's not where we're at. But you can see that from a creative point of view, there are different ways to go in order to carve out your niche and to love and enjoy what you're doing. Growing your production business is definitely great fun. But understand that as you grow it, the reality sometimes ends up changing because with with that come processes that you don't necessarily enjoy. And the same that as a one-man band, you can end up, you have to be the accountant. You have to, maybe look at doing the invoices. You have to pick up the telephone call and do your cold calling. Yes, with growing your business, you do get to assign tasks that you don't want to do to other people. But by then doing that, you also have different things that you have to worry about because the overheads are larger. You may have to be worrying about costs. You maybe have to be worrying about employment. Or what if someone that you employ ends up leaving? Well, then you've got to worry about recruiting them and getting them back in. So those are all things that we have to worry about. Thank you very much for listening to me here on YouTube today. I'm glad that we managed to go live today. Please feel free now, if you are on the comment box, you have any questions related to creativity, to do with business, filmmaking, etc., feel free to drop them straight into the chat now as a bonus for actually being live, watching this and live. And we will see if we can just take these last few moments to see if we can answer any questions that end up being meaningful to people. That would be absolutely awesome. So I'm now just looking at questions that are coming in. And I am going to leave it for those of you who are online right now, I'm going to leave this for approximately 30 seconds or so. Thank you once again to those of you who've subscribed, because I imagine you're only finding out about this video right now live if you have subscribed. And we're going to see if there's any questions that people have got in the chat box. Question 1 is in there now, just reading that through. Christian says, any industries that you're curious about that you haven't yet worked with? Now, do you mean industries for me to actually work in myself? Or do you mean industries that I would like myself and Vivida to work alongside? Clarify that for me. Sebastian Savoy, how you doing? You say, would you recommend filmmakers to collaborate with an agency to get work? I didn't. I'll answer that one first. So I didn't collaborate with any agencies to get work. I think the reality of it is, though, that it meant that my own growth was marked by the pace at which I could go and get good clients. So I'm here now running Vivida, and I'm a number of years into my journey. So now we're starting to work with some great brands, and we're working not on the advertising side. We're working with the lower hanging fruit within these bigger organizations. If I had worked with an agency, the upside is I could name drop much earlier on in my career, and I could say, I've worked with Nike, yeah, and I've done this, and yeah, I've worked with, I've worked with this company, I've worked with that company. You get to name drop maybe much earlier in your career. The reason being is an agency can have an infrastructure that is designed to bring in business, and that infrastructure is something that you will not yet have until you progress to a substantial level in your career, until you have team. So to walk into an agency and go, look, this is what I can do. This is my portfolio. Love to keep in touch. Or, hey, agency person or production company, even hit up production companies. Can I go for a coffee? Like, for example, Joe Gubb. He's ended up on a few of my shoots just by going, hey, can I have a coffee with you? And we've had a coffee, and then we've ended up, I've used him on jobs. So it can be a great way. I mean, for example, Joe can say, and Cornell, both of them can say, yeah, we were involved in a shoot for Burberry. Is it their client? No. And they could never profess that it is their client, but they can name drop and go, yeah, sure, we've worked on a project for Burberry. They didn't get that. They literally moved into the shoot for one day. It took me 2 months in order to be able to get that particular project on the table, right? There are projects that we've done that have taken 1 year in order to be able to pull that project off. But someone else who's gone into that agency, dropped their name in, and then they've been selected for that shoot gets to do it like that. So there are some benefits. It's just that you can't take the client with you. You can't directly contact the client. And sometimes you're under some form of NDA. So there's a balance. So, Christian, just back to your question there. Any industries that you're curious about working with and working alongside? No, I think at the moment I've got a really strong idea of the direction that I want Vivida to be traveling in. I've got a really good idea of what that client looks like. And I've geared my portfolio now in that direction. So I think that's one of the things that you should very much start to think about. You have to work out what your ideal client looks like and then work out what that persona is. I think actually, just thinking about it, I did this project for Helena Bordillin, which is online on Vimeo currently. Forgive me, YouTube. And this project was awesome. As a sports professional tied in with the subject of mental health, this is an example of the type of work that I would like to do. One of my ideal clients would be an Adidas or a Nike. Yeah, I've done some work with Nike, but just literally, it was photojournalism for an event. So I don't put Nike on my list of companies I've worked with, just because the interaction was not as much. It wasn't so direct, if that makes sense. So the sporting industry is something, despite the shape of my posture, that I'm interested in, just because I love I love filming people, and sports and that story really, really interests me. Question from ICE Entertainment. Okay, how do you get rid of someone who is not good enough in a polite way? Very good question. So first thing is are they employed? If they are technically employed, it is a little bit more complex, certainly by UK law, to dismiss somebody, because you end up needing to have valid reasons as to why. So yeah, I have had people on my team before who I've had to keep, and I've not found an easy way to get rid of them, which is why the recruitment, and get rid of them is not the right term, to let them go. Some jobs you can have very, very clear KPIs. Yeah. So what that means is, very, very clear standards as to what success looks like for them. So sales, if you work in sales, you may be given a target. If you haven't been bought in any business, you can go, look, I'm really sorry, but you're clearly not doing your job. And for this reason, unfortunately, we're going to say goodbye. Those individuals, that's a lot easier, because that can be those understandings are very, very clear. If someone just doesn't quite have the talent, you could just try and say, look, I would love to work with you, maybe sometimes in a freelance capacity in future, but I'm not sure 100% this is the right fit. Or if you go through a time of austerity where money isn't good, that can be a legitimate reason in order to say goodbye to someone in a tactful way, because the financially times are hard, and the reality is it is. And then your headcount goes down, and then when you go back up again, then you consider the best form of talent. If the work and the demand isn't there for a particular individual, that in itself is a reason. Always do your best to get some HR advice as well. One of the downsides of employing people is it can become a little bit more difficult to lay off the weakest link. Doing it politely is not a problem. That bit's easy, because that's just part of human nature. But doing it in a way that doesn't leave you open to a lawsuit is a different thing altogether. And naturally, if you do have to, give people as much notice as possible. You're listening to Simeon Quarry here. I will feel like you listen to Simeon Quarry on the Simeon Quarry radio show, just because I've got a big microphone in front of me. But the reality is we're watching live here on YouTube. Thank you to those of you who are watching live here, contributing into the chat, firing any questions through. We started off with the subject, looking at the difficulties behind growth in your agency or in my agency or production company. Always here online, I try my best to give you the good, the bad, and also the ugly, the reality of life behind the camera. Or behind the virtual reality hands as we see it. Thank you to those of you who subscribe. Thank you to those of you who also like. There are a series of videos, if you like this, that you may enjoy online. Surely the previous one, looking at how to grow your production company, will be of interest. And there's a great video on how to start a production company as well that's there on YouTube. Just dropping straight back into the questions, though, just to spend the remaining minutes before I need to pack for a flight to India. I'm just going to see if there's just a little bit of time here. Okay. I've got a restricted message, which I don't know why that's restricted, but here we go. Sebastian says, and I'm just reading, give me a second because this is live. Yeah, that's great. Any thoughts on what? I'm just reading this live and there's a few comments to read through. Sebastian says, interesting. That was the point about whether you collaborate with other agencies. He says he's not doing it at the moment. He's getting clients by himself, but getting clients is a pain in the bottom. And the truth is that never, ever changes, really. You may get a lot of word of mouth coming through, but it's still a lot of work. The bigger the project, the longer it takes to bring in the client. And the bigger the client, the longer it takes. Yes, there's definitely a benefit, but again, do clients care more about clients you've worked with, or more about the actual work you've done? Okay, there we've got the question. The question is do clients care more about your work or more about the clients you've worked with? Okay, that's also probably a subject for another video. I think it's a split the difference with both. Okay, if you were going to hire someone to do a job, you want to know that the person, think about it for yourself. Let's say you wanted to hire in a production company for you that was going to film your behind the scenes video or make a documentary on you. What would you be looking for? You would want to know that you were not their first ever job. The way you know that is because you can see clients maybe that they've worked with in the past, and you also want to see that they've got a standard to it, which is dependent on the work. If I was to emphasize one or the other, the most important at the beginning is definitely having work. So many people are able to name drop. I had one company come into me and go, we've got a Bic razor, the shavers. Would you mind? Bic is a massive company, right? And Gillette, for example. They came into the studio, quickly ran in and said, could you mind just quickly taking a photograph of this razor for us? We just need to send it off to someone just to show them a new design. I took the snap, I emailed it across to them, and that was it. And I can put the company name at that stage straight on my website. The reality is that I didn't really do much for them. So a lot of people get to place company names all over their website, but you're interested in what they've done and the quality and standard of what they've done. So I put a lot of emphasis, certainly on the beginning, on creating work that represents what you're able to do. This video here had no client. This is the portrait of Helena Bourdillon on video, probably one of my best, if not my best piece of work so far, one that I'm really, really proud of. I've made that for myself to show what I'm capable of doing myself and as a team, and to validate that production process that we go through. And as a result of this process, I've then now started to get really good conversations with a number of large brands and large companies on the basis and on the back of this production product or video. So the reality is, for me, the key thing at the beginning is go out and create your own work. There is another video that's on the subject of passion projects. Use passion projects, right? Create your own passion projects, but gear them towards the clients that you want to get. So for example, let's say I want to work with a Nike or an Adidas or something, Adidas or someone like that. This project is likely to resonate more with them because it's directly related to sport. Yeah. So that's what I've then gone and created. I hope that starts to answer your question. Jumping back to ICE, great. And what's the person who's clearly has a skill set? But okay, this was about trying to get rid of somebody. What about the person who clearly has the skill set but is too cocky? Okay, that's a really good question. So look, when you develop a team, you're looking for rounded out individuals who bolster and prop up that creative process. I could work with some amazing creative people, but because of their attitude, actually, I no longer feel creative because I'm constantly battling with them. And there's that sense of ego. So yes, absolutely, they've ended up going. But also understand that some people just, they value the wrong qualities. And it's not really that they are bad people. It's just that they're valuing the wrong things. So they think that what they need to succeed is to show that show you that they're brilliant, to show you that they're the best. They maybe been watching Suits on TV and they start to act in a certain way, or they've been watching The Apprentice and they assume that in order to be good at business, they need to become like Alan Sugar, for example, or Donald Trump if you're in the States. And I don't know who the person that does The Apprentice is now that he's the president. So they start to act in this persona. First thing you have to do is you just have a really honest, frank conversation with them. We've had this with some team members in the past. We have people of all sorts of personalities. There are some traits in personality that people have had to chisel and knock straight out of me. And we've had to do it with others. I remember one team member who will have to remain nameless, who the way we got round it was that, hi, Matt. I'm on YouTube live at the moment, so I'll give you a call back in a bit. All right, mate, bye. That's Matt, looks after business development. We've had to knock the certain rough edges straight out of them because they were cocky, maybe had the wrong type of jokes in public, etc. So everyone delicately just, chiseled in little by little, and he started to realize. But you have to be careful that doesn't turn into a culture of someone being teased or jibed, etc. The best thing to do, just talk to him directly, and just go, look, it's as a business, this is the type of personality and culture that we're looking to have, lead by example. If anything, something, if you are a business, one thing that can be helpful is create a brand manual and create a staff manual. Or have actually create a document, could just be an A4 page or a few slides on a PowerPoint presentation that lay out the core pillars and qualities behind you as a business. Most big companies have it. They might go, our key phrases as a business and as a team is integrity, genuineness. We want to be approachable and down to earth and empathetic. Right? Let's say those are your 4 key pillars as a brand. And then you can go, look, team, as a brand and as a business, to get the type of clientele that we're looking at, and to have the internal culture that we want, these are the core things we want to be expressing, because this is going to make us different to the rest of the other businesses. How can we do exactly the same ourselves? We need to mirror these qualities. So then what happens is you then go about mirroring those qualities as individuals and help everyone in the team to realize that you yourself have to work on those exact same things. Don't try and change the person. Make sure that person realizes that actually everyone in the team needs to go through some type of change. And that way you bring people on board and they start to go through this process of evolution and change with you. And then those people that don't fit, they will end up disappearing. They will end up going. I definitely can think of one person in the team who's left because they've actually realized, something, I'm in the Suits movie. I want to be, I want to carry myself in a different way. I've got, that doesn't fit in with the way I want to work. And actually, I'm like, there's not room for 2 egos in this business, right? I'm the front man partly for this business. Other people also get involved in that, but I'm going to be the main founding partner or individual. And we can't be having those clashes. And in the end, they just end up moving on themselves. So hopefully that is helpful. Just in that little deviation from our discussion that we've had at the beginning. Guys, we are live right now. For those of you who are watching this, where's the sweet spot in focus? There. So that makes me soft and that makes me sharp. I should be here. There we go. Lawrence Thomas, how you doing, Lawrence? I'm currently a one-man band doing lots of run and gun style travel shoots. Good fun because you're traveling. Are there any actionable tips to start building out a team? First bit of advice, there's a video on the YouTube channel called, I think it's called Starting a Production Company, where I explain how I managed to build up my team step by step. But if no one minds and I start just to drop into this straight away with my initial thoughts, so you're involved in travel, you're doing run and gun style. So I think one key thing is with a run and gun style, you could either start to look at doing more projects where it requires more people. So question is can you get the demand up sufficiently in your business whereby you need somebody else in order to be able to do it with you? Or what you need to be able to do is to be able to justify the benefit of having an extra person in your team, maybe to your clients, right? So if you I would ask this question, so why can't you have somebody else in your team? What's the reason, Lawrence, that you couldn't just get a second person to join you on your travel shoots? Question for you to drop straight in. So get the keyboard going and type that answer for me. I'd be really interested to see, why can't you drop somebody else immediately into your team for your travel shoots? What is that barrier? Is it down to cost and what you're being paid for a project? Is it that, is there no real need and you just want to add somebody in? Okay, currently it's trying to convince companies to add that extra budget. Okay, perfect. The key thing a business wants is they want to see value, okay? Value doesn't mean cheap. They want to see that there's good value in what they're spending the money on. So at the moment, you're probably just basing your pricing based on a per individual, right? You might be charging and you might be going, okay, for one person, for one day, it's this price. Well, actually take out the charge for the individual person and focus on charging for the solution itself. So I don't charge by the day and I don't charge by the number of team members. If a client says, so how many people will there be? I might go, well, maybe it will be, I might give a guesstimation, but essentially I'm saying to them, well, it's going to be as many people as I need to do the job. But what they need to know is they need to know the bottom line. So think about what a second individual adds to your process. Maybe it's as simple as, something, when we're traveling, because of the equipment that I want to travel with, you either fly me business class so I can get the extra suitcase in, or I travel with someone with me who means that I can get all the important camera equipment in 2 hand luggage bags. I'm not traveling in business class. And it also means I've got a second pair of hands when I'm on the shoot. Or actually it's down to the logistics. What I'm doing is I'm looking at the shots, I'm doing this, that, and the other, but we need to be tackling this from 2 angles at the same time. Like, what's the story and the narrative that you can tell your potential clients, that they then understand that either you need it and you need to do it with that, or that there is a tangible benefit in increasing production value, or the opportunity to create a more consistent, product. Yes, charge for a project rate instead of a day rate. Or if you charge a day rate, make sure the day rate includes 2 people. So start off with that and say, look, for what you're looking for, I reckon the cost is X amount of dollars. Okay. And then they go, oh, that's a bit too steep. It's too expensive. And you might go, look, there are a couple of ways that we could try and bring this cost down. So at the moment, what we have is I've got 2 people. So now the benefit of having 2 people on this shoot is, one, with the equipment that I like to travel with, we need to make sure, ideally, I spread that kit among 2 people, because of traveling in economy or premium economy. It means I can get 2 bags through for the important equipment. The other thing is, even from a safety point of view, when we're traveling around some of these locations, it means X, Y, and Z. But we could take that out. And if we do take that, it will bring down that budget a little bit. And I'm willing to consider doing that, though my recommendation and preference to you would be that we go with this. Cheap doesn't mean good, right? Most productions, are not done just on the basis of price. It's something you just have to end up getting out of your head. Even on weddings, they're not necessarily, with weddings, they don't do them with necessarily one person. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. But it's just about creating that overall narrative as to why that increase in production value is important. And believe me, most companies and businesses actually do 100% get it. It's just that you need to paint the picture as to why doing that is a better option. The thing that you must remember, Lawrence, and everyone else also watching here, is you need to act more like a consultant. You know best. They hire you because you know best. So why do we let our clients tell us what we need? They don't know. We know, because we live this day in, day out. So actually, your persona and the way you talk, and the confidence that you get to have as a business based on, and as a creative, based on your experience, And even if it's not based on experience, just based on what you understand, most clients will actually end up wanting to hear and listen to your advice. Why? Because if you were to give them a warning and say, look, my recommendation is this, I do not recommend that we go down this route and have a one person, but it is doable. I just want to be totally transparent and honest with you that there are a massive gain to be made by just adding that bit of extra budget to have that second pair of hands. I don't recommend having one. I'll let you know that, but we could do it with one if that's absolutely the only way we're going to be able to do this. Because my main thing is I really want to work with you and I really want to make something happen. So, what would you recommend? And that type of thing can really start to help. Hopefully, Lawrence, that hopefully answers your question. We have been cracking on for nearly an hour, nearly 50 minutes. Thank you for joining me here in the Vivida studio. I hope you've had fun, and I hope that there's been some benefits to the conversation that we've had here online over the course of the last almost 1 hour. Really appreciated the live engagement that's on here on YouTube. Appreciate those of you who follow me on Instagram and YouTube and Twitter, for example. What's coming up and what's been going on. So just to give you a bit of an insight into the kind of production world that I've been going through at the moment. The last few months have been absolutely crazy. We are trying right now to get in as much work as possible. Remember that this time of year, after that holiday period of August and July and August, things get busy again a bit. But really what your focus is on doing is business gets quieter in December. And certainly towards the end of December, the two things happen. One is people that you're already talking to start to try and speed up because they want to make business happen for January. You know what it's like? Personally, you have a New Year's resolution. Businesses have New Year's resolutions as well. It often means that what they sometimes want to do is they want to get going on productions. The key thing is you have to be having your conversations now. Because if you haven't had your conversations by November, the likelihood that you're going to be getting business in December is very, very unlikely. The likelihood of you getting business in January is possible, but it's not easy. So we've been trying to make now count from a business point of view. These months between right now and November are really key and important. We've also, what else has been going on? We've just finished a project for Burberry. We're looking at doing some other things for them. Posted the video on Helena Bourdillon. Please take a look and watch that. Appreciate any support, any shares you can give on that. Last week, we were in New York, myself and Charlie, on the virtual reality side of things. We're on tour for Barclays right now. We're focused on storytelling, but by any means necessary, which sometimes means immersion into VR. We create everything in 3D. And then we use the Oculus Rift in order to be able to transport people directly into the scene or the movie that we've created, but you actually interact. So we're on tour showing that the products we've created for Barclays. Last week was New York. Next week is India. Or tomorrow is India. So I'm about to, when we cut this transmission, quickly pack the bags and get ready to fly off. So yeah, whatever you're doing, please have fun. Enjoy the process, as a number of entrepreneurs have rightly said. As you move through your journey in trying to grow your production company or yourself as an individual, understanding what you want to do, what you like doing, make sure that you enjoy the process and you will end up succeeding. Thank you very much for watching in. Really, really appreciate that. And thank you to those of you who are watching this on replay. Signing out.